The system became the dispute. Why I am questioning SEBI's ODR framework. The paradox of escalation. Winning wasn't the end of the story. Imagine spending months preparing a case, studying the regulations, collecting every document, attending every hearing, cooperating with every direction, and finally winning. Most people would think the story ends there. Mine began there. Because what happened after I won the conciliation is, in my opinion, far more disturbing than the dispute itself. This isn't a story about losing. It isn't about dissatisfaction with an award. It's about what happened when I questioned an official conciliation report that, in my understanding, contained factual errors, material omissions, and calculations that didn't match the documentary record. And what happened when I used the very complaint mechanism SEBI created to raise that. Let me be absolutely clear. Everything I am about to say is backed by an unassailable paper trail, emails, official replies, the SEBI online dispute resolution framework, and over a year of official correspondence. I am placing this in the public domain because every institutional mechanism available to me has been completely exhausted. Before we go any further, let me clarify one thing. I am not trying to avoid arbitration. I want the arbitration to proceed. But if the system forces me to trust the very dispute resolution institution against which my formal complaint is currently pending, shouldn't that complaint be addressed first? The anatomy of a broken process. How a favorable report still failed the facts. My case was against my broker. Like any investor, I went through SEBI's online dispute resolution framework, Smart ODR. The matter was allotted to an ODR institution, Jupitize, and a conciliator was appointed. I left nothing to assumption. Every contention was backed by documents, every calculation explained, every relevant circular cited. But as proceedings went on, I noticed things that troubled me. The respondent got repeated opportunities despite little cooperation. Hearings kept extending. At one stage, discussions happened with the respondent in my absence. I asked for the minutes. They were never shared. I kept cooperating anyway, believing everything would be reflected fairly in the final report. Then, 6 days before the report was due, a Jupiter's representative called. The conciliator needed more time because the report had to capture everything that happened during proceedings. Knowing the process was being dragged out as a standard stalling tactic, and 6 days is enough time, I explicitly denied my consent for an extension. On April 1, 2025, the conciliation report arrived, and within minutes, I realized something had gone terribly wrong. The critical structural evidence and circulars I submitted had vanished entirely. The report was riddled with glaring errors and unexplained calculations that had zero basis in the documentary record. A multi-week process was trivialized into a broken document. The rectification roadblock. When correcting a mistake was refused, I found factual mistakes, material omissions, issues that had taken up real time during proceedings, reduced to a single sentence, or dropped entirely. Calculations that, despite every document on record, had no identifiable basis. And most disturbing, the very report that needed extra time to capture everything discussed didn't capture several of those discussions at all. I didn't accuse anyone of misconduct. I didn't go to social media. I didn't refuse arbitration. I asked for the one thing any reasonable person would ask for: rectification. Human beings make mistakes. If there are mistakes, correct them. If there are omissions, include them. Correcting an obvious clerical or mathematical error strengthens public confidence in a system. Refusing to look at it destroys it. I sent a formal rectification request to Jupiters. The institution's response was swift and dismissive. They told me that the conciliator refused to rectify the report. They also told me that Section 33 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act allows for the correction of arbitral awards, but there is no such provision for conciliation reports. They told me the report was final, non binding, and that my only option was to move to arbitration. Think about the dangerous loophole this creates. If an investor points out glaring, undeniable factual errors as soon as the report is published, who examines it? If the conciliator can walk away, if the ODR institution has no authority, and if the exchange stays silent, then the framework actively protects errors under the guise of procedure. The escalation ladder, NSE's inaction, round robin excuses, real consequences. I filed a formal complaint against the conciliator's conduct directly with Jupiter's, keeping the National Stock Exchange in loop. Not because I lost. The report was actually favorable on merits but broken on accuracy. But I filed it because the manner of the proceedings and the refusal to address clear factual issues deserved independent examination. Under Schedule C, Clause 8 of the SEBI Master Circular, it is explicitly mandated that any complaint received against a conciliator shall be promptly examined by the ODR institution. That complaint should have started accountability. Instead, it started a year of silence. First, I was told the complaint needed a physical signature, a requirement I searched for in the SEBI Master Circular and the framework and could never find. I simply asked, "Show me the rule and I'll comply." That question was never answered. The complaint just stayed pending. So, I approached the National Stock Exchange, not asking them to punish Jupiter's, but to examine whether its empaneled ODR institution had met its obligations. Instead, I was repeatedly told to proceed with arbitration before the very institution my complaint against was still unresolved. Ask yourself honestly, would you have full confidence walking into that arbitration? With Jupiter stalling, I repeatedly pushed the NSE. The SEBI ODR Master Circular Clause 13 explicitly mandates that any complaint against an ODR institution must be promptly examined by the exchange and appropriate action must be taken. Did the NSE investigate? No. Somewhere in this, my request got misread as wanting Jupiter's replaced. That was never it. My position was simpler: address the complaint first. If it has no merit, I accept that. If it does, act on it. Only then let arbitration proceed. Wanting accountability and wanting a different forum are not the same thing, but they were repeatedly treated as if they were. Month after month, from April 2025 to early 2026, I sent near daily reminders. The NSE simply issued copy pasted responses. They told me that because allocations happen on a round robin basis, there is no provision to change the ODR institution once assigned. Look at the absurdity of this position. I have an unaddressed compliance complaint against Jupiters, not just for violating natural justice, but also not complying with the SEBI Master Circular. Yet, the NSE continues to push me to proceed with arbitration with that exact same institution, even demanding that I pay the prescribed arbitration fees. I firmly refused to pay those fees until my compliance questions were answered. Would any reasonable person place their financial fate in the hands of an organization they are actively complaining against? The scores disposal loop: filed 3 times, answered 0 times. When the exchange completely abandoned its oversight duties, I turned to the final safeguard, SEBI, via the scores portal. Again, not to escape arbitration, but to ask one thing: did the exchange and its ODR institution follow the framework when a complaint was filed against a conciliator? On November 25, 2025, I filed a formal complaint against the NSE under case number SABI EKN 25 BENG048341. For over 3 months, that complaint sat up in the system. Finally, on March 5, 2026, SEBI disposed of it. Their remarks were a mockery of redressal. They simply told me to refer to the NSE's action taken report dated February 18, which was nothing but the same round robin defense copy pasted yet again. They completely twisted my grievance, claiming I just wanted a change of institution, while ignoring the core fact that my complaint against the institution's conduct was never examined. To make matters worse, the automated email from Scores told me I could submit a counter response using a review button on the portal within 15 days. I logged in immediately. The button did not exist. The digital interface had no provision to upload a review. I emailed SEBI authorities on February 19, 2026, attaching my objections directly. They completely ignored them and closed the case. Because the interface locked me out, I was forced to refile the matter under case number ending with 16959. It was closed again without review. As I film this video, the dispute remains completely unresolved, trapped under my third consecutive refiling, ending with 3216. Why I'm going public? Not the first step, the last resort. This isn't the start of my struggle. It's the final step after exhausting every remedy. I trusted the conciliator, then the institution, then the exchange, then the regulator. Only after each failed to answer did I decide these questions deserve to be asked in public. Today, my money is still stuck. Not because arbitration wasn't available, but because the institutions meant to protect confidence in the process, in my understanding, never addressed the complaint that broke that confidence in the first place. Justice isn't only about an outcome, it's about people continuing to believe in the process that produced it. Some may ask, after a year, why not just move on? Because this is bigger than my case. Today it's my complaint. Tomorrow it could be yours. And the next investor deserves to know whether a complaint against these institutions actually gets examined. Three questions for three institutions. I'm not asking for a verdict. I'm asking for an answer. The SEBI ODR framework is an excellent concept on paper. India's retail investors desperately need it. But no digital framework can survive if accountability completely vanishes during its implementation. So today, I am publicly placing these specific recorded questions before three distinct institutions. To Jupitize. Did you examine my complaint against the conciliator as the SEBI framework requires? If yes, where are the findings? To the National Stock Exchange. When I said the ODR institution failed to address my complaint, what did you actually examine, or did you simply rely on their response? Why did you fail your regulatory mandate under the ODR Master Circular to promptly examine the non compliance of your empaneled partner, choosing instead to push me into a compromised arbitration? To SEBI, I replied to every action taken report in detail repeatedly. Were those replies genuinely examined before my complaint was disposed of? I am not asking anyone to accept my version blindly. I am asking the authorities to explain theirs. If I have misunderstood the framework, show me where. If I am wrong, say so with reasons. I have no difficulty accepting a reasoned answer. What I can't accept after a year is the continued absence of 1. Closing, answer first. Arbitrate after. I still want the arbitration to proceed. I wanted it yesterday. I want it today. But first, let my complaint be decided. If Jupitize met every obligation, demonstrate it. If NSE fulfilled its role, show it. If SEBI examined every issue I raised, explain it. Then, with full confidence, let arbitration proceed. This video is an invitation to these regulatory bodies to place their objective reasoning in the public domain, because justice is not just about delivering outcomes. It is about the absolute integrity of the system itself. No institution becomes weaker by answering questions. Institutions only become weaker when they stop. To every investor watching, don't take my word for it. Read the documents, the framework, the correspondence, the replies, and decide for yourself. Because accountability that only applies to investors and not to the institutions overseeing them isn't accountability at all. Thank you for listening. If you believe institutions should be willing to answer the same questions they ask of the public, please share this.